Welcome back to the Booknote podcast, ready for another deep dive.
Always. What are we tackling today?
This time we're diving into Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, that's a good one.
It really is.
I've heard so much about this book, heard it's a classic.
Oh, absolutely. And we got a really interesting collection of reviews and summaries from you guys for this one.
Perfect. Should give us plenty to talk about.
Yeah. It seems like this book has really, changed how people think about thinking. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Definitely ahead of its time.
Like, one reviewer even compared Kahneman and his research partner, Amos Tversky, to the Lewis and Clark of the mind.
Wow. That's high praise.
It is. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They really did map out this whole new territory of, how our minds work and why we make the decisions we do.
And the crazy thing is, think about it. Before this book, most of us probably just assumed we were, pretty rational beings making logical choices. But Kahneman comes along and says...
That's so fast.
Exactly. There's a whole lot going on beneath the surface that we're not even aware of.
Yeah. And he doesn't just present, dry academic theories. One of the things I love about this book is that he uses these really relatable examples, even humor, to kind of make these concepts come to life.
Oh, for sure. That's what makes it such a great read, even if you're not, a psychology expert.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where should we even begin with this exploration of how our minds work?
Well, I think the best place to start is with the foundation of the book, right? Which is this whole idea of two systems of thinking, System 1 and System 2.
Oh, yeah. That's the core concept, right?
It is. System 1 is that fast, intuitive, almost automatic system that's operating in the background all the time.
Like our gut reactions and stuff.
Exactly. And then System 2, System 2 is slower, it's more deliberate. It's that kind of thinking we engage in when we're really trying to solve a problem or make a careful decision.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So it's System 1 is kind of like the autopilot, and then System 2 is like the pilot who needs to take over when things get a little tricky.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay, cool. So let's say, I see a spider, and jump back. That's System 1, right?
Yeah.
That automatic fear response.
Exactly. And then a few seconds later, System 2 kicks in, and you're like, wait a minute, that was just a tiny spider. I'm probably overreacting.
Okay, yeah. That makes total sense.
But to really illustrate how easily System 1 can lead us astray even with, really simple tasks, Kahneman talks about this classic problem.
Oh, is this the...
It's called the bat and ball problem.
Yeah, I've heard of this. Is it like a bat and a ball costs $1.10 together, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball?
Right. And then the question is...
how much does the ball cost?
Yes. And what do you think? What's your gut instinct?
10 cents.
See? That's System 1 in action.
But I know it's not right.
Most people say 10 cents because it just feels right. It's that quick, easy answer. But if you actually, slow down, engage that System 2...
you realize it's wrong.
The ball actually costs 5 cents.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's like a simple little math problem that tricks you.
Totally. And it shows how often we just kind of rely on that fast, intuitive thinking.
Even when it leads to, totally wrong answers.
So basically, we're constantly making decisions based on this kind of autopilot system.
Yeah.
And that's kind of unsettling, isn't it?
It is a little bit, especially when you think about how this plays out in, bigger, more important decisions, you know?
Are we really making these life-altering choices based on...
gut feelings?
Yeah.
I mean, Kahneman argues that this duality in our thinking affects everything, literally everything from our personal relationships to, our financial decisions.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because it's not just about these two systems. All the reviews kept talking about these things called...
oh, you mean cognitive biases?
Yeah, cognitive biases. So what exactly are those?
Okay, so cognitive biases are basically mental shortcuts that our brains take to simplify things.
Like little rules of thought.
Yeah, exactly. They help us make quick judgments in a complex world.
That makes sense.
But often these shortcuts lead to predictable errors in our thinking.
So it's our brains are trying to be efficient, but they end up tripping over themselves sometimes.
Exactly. And one example of this that really stuck out to me was in one of the reviews is this thing called the anchoring effect.
Anchoring?
Anchoring. Have you heard of this one?
I think so. Is that the one where even irrelevant numbers can influence our decisions?
Yes.
I remember reading about this study with German judges.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that one.
Okay, so these judges, they rolled dice before giving sentences.
Wait, they rolled dice?
Yeah, but the dice were loaded to land on either a high number or a low number.
Okay.
And guess what? The judges who rolled the higher numbers ended up giving harsher sentences.
Even though the dice roll was totally random.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that just shows how susceptible we are to these, like, subtle influences. That even a random number can become an anchor for our judgment.
It's wild. It's like our brains latch onto that first piece of information, even if it's completely irrelevant.
And it can really mess with our decision-making.
Big time.
But here's the thing. Knowing about these biases, you could actually use it to your advantage.
Oh, absolutely. It's like once you see the strings...
You can't be puppeted.
Exactly. Like if you're negotiating a salary, you could try throwing out a really high number first to kind of anchor the negotiation in your favor.
No, that's smart.
Yeah. You're basically setting a high starting point so that even if they negotiate you down...
You're still in good shape.
Yeah, exactly.
So understanding these biases can actually help us become more aware of how our minds work and, like, make more informed decisions.
I think that's a huge part of it. It's like Kahneman's giving us this user manual for our own minds, you know?
Yeah, I like that. A user manual.
Helping us to understand these hidden forces that are shaping our thoughts and actions.
Totally. Speaking of hidden forces, before we go any further, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you're enjoying this deep dive into thinking fast and slow, be sure to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast.
Yes, subscribe.
For more insightful book discussions.
And if you're loving what you're hearing...
leave us a rating or a review.
Yeah, it really does help other bookworms, like, discover the podcast.
And keeps us going. Okay, now let's get back to these fascinating cognitive biases.
Yes. So we talked about anchoring. There's another bias that I think a lot of people can relate to. It's called the focusing illusion.
The focusing illusion.
Yeah. It basically says that nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you're thinking about it.
Okay, so, like, when you're totally stressed out about a work deadline, it feels like the end of the world, but then a week later...
It's like, what was I even worried about?
Exactly.
Right. And Kahneman says that this illusion is, like, everywhere. We overestimate the impact of, like, a new car on our happiness or, you know, how devastating a job loss will be.
Yeah, makes sense. So what's the antidote to this focusing illusion?
I think the key is to kind of like step back from the situation.
Get some perspective.
Yeah. Ask yourself, will this matter a year from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good one. Put things in perspective.
Often just putting things into perspective can help us, like, manage our anxiety.
And make better decisions.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
So we've got anchoring, the focusing illusion. Are there any other biases from the sources that really stood out to you?
Oh, yeah. There's one more that's really fascinating. It's called the peak end rule.
Peak end rule. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So the peak end rule explains how our memories of experiences are, like, shaped by two main things.
That's right.
The most intense point of the experience and the very end of it.
Oh, interesting. So, like, if you go on a vacation that starts out kind of rough, but then it ends on this amazing high note.
You're more likely to remember it positively overall.
Wow. That's powerful.
Right. So, like, it's not just the sum total of all the moments. It's, like, these key moments that really stick with us.
Makes sense. I mean, think about it. How often do you really remember every single detail of an experience?
It's more like a highlight reel.
Exactly. A few key scenes.
And this applies to, like, everything. Vacations, medical procedures.
Yeah.
Just think about that next time you're planning something.
Yeah, you can, like, engineer the experience to be more memorable.
Exactly. Or even just when you're reflecting on a past experience, it's like the beginning and the end can have this surprisingly powerful impact on how we remember the whole thing.
Wow. All this is so fascinating. I'm already starting to look at my own decision-making in a whole new light. But I got to ask, why should we even care about all these biases?
Yeah.
What's the practical application of understanding them?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
The main point is that by becoming aware of these biases, we can start to recognize when our system 1 is leading us astray.
Okay. And then what?
And then we can engage system 2, the more rational system to, like, take control and make a more informed decision.
Gotcha. So thinking fast and slow is basically a guide to becoming more self-aware and making more conscious choices.
Exactly. It's like we're taking control of the autopilot and becoming, like, better pilots of our own lives.
I love that. It's empowering.
It is. And I think one of the most important things that Kahneman highlights is that we are often like strangers to ourselves.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we're often unaware of these hidden forces, these biases.
That are influencing everything.
Exactly. They're shaping our thoughts and actions without us even realizing it. And by shining a light on these biases,
we can take back control.
Yes.
Okay, I'm liking this. This is good.
Yeah.
So by understanding these biases,
we can become more deliberate and informed in our choices.
It's like we're leveling up as humans.
We are. And, this whole idea of us being strangers to ourselves, it kind of leads into another big point that Kahneman makes.
Okay, what's up?
So for a long time, like traditional economics, they operated on this assumption that humans were like perfectly rational.
Yeah.
Like always making the most logical decisions.
Weighing all the options?
Exactly. And they called this theoretical being Homo economicus.
Homo economicus. Interesting. So like this perfectly rational decision maker.
Exactly. Always choosing the optimal path.
Makes sense, right? I mean, in theory.
Well, Kahneman and Tversky, they come along and they're like, not so fast. That's not how people actually behave in the real world.
Yeah, our biases get in the way.
Exactly. And thinking fast and slow really provides this like more realistic view of human behavior.
Humbling too, I think.
Definitely. It acknowledges that we're all susceptible to these biases.
We're not perfect.
And our decisions, well, they're not always as rational as we'd like to think they are.
So we're not these perfectly calculating machines. We're more like, I don't know, humans.
Yes. Humans with all our quirks and irrationalities.
It's kind of freeing, actually.
It is. It's liberating. And it can actually make us like more savvy consumers and negotiators. Think about it. Once you understand these biases, you can start to spot them everywhere.
Like in advertising.
Yeah. Marketing, sales tactics, even in like your own negotiations, it's like you're seeing the matrix.
So instead of being manipulated by these biases,
you can use that knowledge to your advantage.
Oh, I like that.
It's like having a secret weapon. You're playing the game with a whole new set of rules.
Yeah, one thing that I found really interesting in the sources was Kahneman's discussion about the role of chance in life. Like luck. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's a huge one. He basically challenges this whole idea that like success is purely a result of skill and hard work.
So he's saying luck plays a part.
A big part.
Okay. Didn't one of the sources mention something about dart-throwing monkeys?
Yes. There was this study.
I got to hear about this. Tell me.
Okay, so in this study, they had these monkeys, right? Throwing darts to pick stocks.
Monkeys. Throwing darts.
And they compared their performance to professional fund managers. The experts.
Oh, no. Don't tell me the monkeys did better.
Well, not exactly. They didn't necessarily do better. But their performance was comparable.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah. The point is, even in fields where we think skill is, like everything finance, investing luck plays a much bigger role than we want to believe.
So are you saying we should all just give up and let monkeys manage our money?
No, that's not the takeaway. It's more about like having a healthy dose of humility, I guess.
Yeah, so skill is still important, but we shouldn't discount the role of luck.
Exactly. Both in our successes.
And our failures.
It's a balancing act.
This is a lot to take in. So
Yeah.
We've covered the two systems of thinking. We talk about biases, the role of chance. What's the overall takeaway here for us? What do we do with all this information?
That's the big question, right? I think if I had to distill it down to one core message, it's this. Thinking fast and slow offers a profound look at how our minds really work, warts and all. It's a reminder that we're not always as rational as we think we are, but also that by understanding these biases, we can actually make better decisions.
So it's like a call to action to become more conscious thinkers.
Yeah, absolutely. To step outside of autopilot and really engage with our more deliberate, rational selves.
It's a lot, but it's empowering too, knowing we have more control than we think.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of Kahneman's work. It's not about beating ourselves up for being irrational.
It's about understanding.
It's about using that understanding to make more informed choices in the future.
I love that. It's like Thinking Fast and Slow isn't just a book about how our minds work. It's like a guide to living a better life.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about using this knowledge to navigate the world with more wisdom and self-awareness.
Okay, this has been amazing. My brain is buzzing right now.
Mine too. We're rewiring our brains in real time.
I know. And if you're enjoying this deep dive as much as we are,
don't forget to
subscribe to the Book Nook podcast for for more in-depth discussions.
On awesome books just like this.
And if you're loving what you're hearing,
leave us a rating or a review.
It really does help us connect with other bookworms out there.
And keeps the conversation going.
Okay, back to the book.
So one of the things that really stood out to me was how Kahneman talks about the stories we tell ourselves about our past.
Oh, yeah. He goes into that a lot.
It's fascinating how we create these narratives, right? To make sense of our experiences.
Like we're constantly rewriting our own history.
And often those narratives, they're not even accurate. We smooth over the rough edges, highlight the good parts.
Downplay the bad.
Exactly. Like we're all the heroes of our own stories.
But the problem is, like, those rose-colored glasses, they can prevent us from learning from our mistakes.
Totally. If we're always telling ourselves these, like, perfect stories about our past.
I'm not going to agree.
Right. We get stuck.
So how do we combat that?
Yeah.
How do we become more aware of our own, like, self-deception?
That's a tough one. I don't think Kahneman offers, like, a simple solution. But one thing he does suggest is, like, being more willing to question our own assumptions.
Like, don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. And, seek out different perspectives. Talk to people who disagree with you.
Get out of your comfort zone.
Read things that challenge your worldview. Don't just surround yourself with people who constantly reinforce your own beliefs.
Yeah, that's so important. It's easy to get stuck in our own little echo chambers.
Especially these days, right? But when we make that effort to, like, step outside of our comfort zones and expose ourselves to new ideas,
We can start to see things.
the world, ourselves, everything just a little bit more clearly.
It's like thinking fast and slow is like a roadmap to becoming more thoughtful, well-rounded humans.
I love that. A
All right.
roadmap. Yeah, it's not just about the inner workings of our minds, but, like, how to use that knowledge to actually live better lives,
For sure. And I think we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We talked about the two systems, the biases, the role of chance, the stories we tell ourselves about our past.
So much good stuff.
I know, right? Anything else from the sources that you think is worth, like, highlighting before we wrap up?
Oh, there is one thing that really stuck with me. It was from Galen Strawson's review in The Guardian. He talks about this, like, astonishing ability to be unaware of our true motives.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
It is.
So, like, we might think we're making a decision for one reason, but
there could be these, like, underlying motives that we're not even conscious of.
yeah, that's kind of freaky when you think about it.
It is a little bit unsettling, right? To think that we might not even fully understand, like, why we do the things we do.
It's humbling for sure, but it also makes you want to, like, dig deeper, Try to understand yourself better. Like, what are those hidden forces that are shaping my choices?
Totally. And I think that's, like, the whole point of thinking fast and slow. It's like Kahneman's giving us these tools to examine our own thinking, become more aware of those biases that are influencing, like, our perceptions and our decisions.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, hey, you might not be as rational as you think you are, but that's okay. Now you know about these biases. You can start making more conscious and deliberate choices.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about beating ourselves up for our irrationality. It's about, like, embracing it, Like, we're all human.
We're all a little messed up.
And then using that understanding to kind of navigate the world with more, I don't know, wisdom.
It's in self-awareness.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot of things right now. A little terrified, honestly, to realize how much I've been on autopilot,
Yeah, I get it.
but also really excited to start paying more attention to my own thinking, to start making more conscious choices. It's like this whole new world has opened up,
That's the spirit.
A little healthy fear
Yeah.
to keep us on our toes, but mostly excitement about the possibility.
I think that's the perfect way to approach it.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into thinking fast and slow. What a journey.
It really has been. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface,
Oh, yeah. There's so much more to explore in this book.
It's definitely one of those books that you'll want to revisit. Like, keep coming back to it.
And ponder.
Exactly. So if you're as fascinated by thinking fast and slow as we are, be sure to check the link in the episode description to get your copy.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast for more insightful discussions on thought-provoking books, just like this one.
And don't forget to leave us a review. We love hearing from our fellow bookworms.
It really does help us create even better content for you guys.
Thanks for listening.
And until next time, happy reading.